Hello, amazing listeners. Welcome to another episode of the Boo Business Podcast, the unscripted show where we unveil, demystify some of the confusing parts of birth, breastfeeding, and infant care during the first year of life while having a little fun. I'm your host, Naomi Catron, registered nurse and board-certified lactation consultant. Our mission here is simple: to foster collaboration in maternal child health and empower both families and businesses alike. We're all about creating a community where everyone feels supported and informed. In each episode, we dive deep into engaging discussions that span the entire spectrum of birth through the first year. From newborn feeding, because let's face it, it's something we all have got questions about, to tackling issues like tongue ties, the mysteries of pacifiers, mental health, bodywork, and just so much more. So whether you're a new parent navigating the incredible journey of early parenthood or a seasoned professional in the birth business, this podcast is your go-to source for laughter, knowledge, and some great insights. So we're here to make learning about boob business not just informative, but enjoyable. So join us for conversations that not only spark your curiosity, but also bring a smile to your face. So remember, every episode is a chance to connect, learn, and share. So hit the subscribe button and let's embark on this exciting journey together. Hey there, guys. We are back for another episode of the Boo Business Podcast. And today we have a special treat. We have two guests today, one lactation consultant from Milk Diva, and then one mentee, correct? Is that how I say it? Mentee of Milk Diva. And today's episode is all about, a question I get asked a lot, which is, how do I become an IBCLC? How do I become a board certified lactation consultant? And so I figured this could be an episode for those people who are interested in learning what that looks like so they can manage their time. And, you might have kids and figure out, like, when should I start my prerequisites? How much time should I invest in this? What's the expense look like? There's all these pathways, pathway 1, 2, and 3, when it comes to your choices on becoming a lactation consultant. So what are the difference between those pathways? And then I want to learn about real life experiences. Is it worth it? What kind of job can you get? How does this job compare to like maybe some other jobs? So I have a background as a nurse. Katie, who is, I don't know where she's going to appear on your screen, but Katie with the blonde hair, she has an experience as a teacher, and she'll tell us about her experience. And then we have our experience as being a NICU nurse. So we'll chat about that. So if maybe Katie, could you start introducing yourself, and then we'll make our way around?
Yep. I'm Katie, and I have been with Milk Diva since 2021. I actually started my internship with Naomi and Milk Diva when I was learning to become a lactation consultant. So she was responsible for training me. I have a background in education, like Naomi mentioned. I have a childhood education degree, my bachelor's degree, and then I have a master's degree in adult education. And so, I'm super happy to be here and love being an IBCLC. And then Lisa is also with us. I'll let her take it.
Lisa, tell us a little bit about your background.
So my background was in nursing. I got my BSN in nursing and then worked for almost 10 years in the NICU. And then I stopped working when I had young children, and our kids are kind of spread out, so it just got longer and longer. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to do going back to work, I was thinking about the parts of nursing that I loved. And lactation just felt like a really clear path to doing what I would love to do, or where I could make a difference possibly. So I started researching how to become an IBCLC and what it entailed and the different pathways and like how to get started with that.
Got it. I didn't prep you for this question, but I just thought, and we can edit this if this is not going to work, but what made you choose IBCLC versus another kind of lactation certification? Did you like, this is just the one I know, or Lisa, what about for you?
I actually didn't know any of them. I just felt like if I was going to go back and do something, I might as well try to do the most specifically trained lactation consultant.
The highest degree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That would allow me, like, if I really did miss being in the NICU, I could go back and be a consultant in the NICU. But also, just going into private practice, doing it at home, I'd want the most knowledge I could have. And it seemed like that was the best avenue to take.
Got it. That makes sense. I wasn't a loaded question. I was just always curious. Katie, maybe you can explain to people, like, what is an IBCLC and what do they do. IBCLC, I remember when I was first learning about it, I was like, I'm going to be an IBCLC. Like, I just couldn't get that letters or in order.
Yeah.
And I was like, how am I going to be something? I can't even remember all the letters, right? But I eventually got it. But I also, like Lisa, didn't know there was other credentials, like CLC or CBS. So maybe can you share what a board certified lactation consultant is, and then maybe how that fares with some of the other lactation certificates that are out there?
Mm-hmm. So an IBCLC is an internationally board certified lactation consultant. It is recognized worldwide as being the highest level as in terms of lactation goes. And it does involve, I think the biggest part of that education definitely comes with the hands-on experience and the clinical hours that are required to get that certification. And then the difference between an IBCLC and then a CLC, for example, a CLC is a certified lactation counselor, and you basically meet all the requirements to be a CLC before you do the clinical hours for the IBCLC part. So there's testing involved and things like that, but you basically get all the credentials to be a CLC, then you take it further with the clinical hours and with the additional testing, the IBCLC test. When you get that test, then you are fully certified. As far as becoming a CLC, you still have to have the same college credits. So the science background, which involves biology courses, the counseling course, there's child education courses that you have to have, or child development courses, and then also the same health science courses, like certified.
I think nutrition is one of the classes, right?
Nutrition is one of the college classes, but for the health classes is also like breast. Sorry, why is my mind going blank? CPR trained.
Okay.
Basic life support, BLS, that's what I was trying to think of. Those are also part of the CLC, but then the additional hands-on lactation-specific training, in addition to that, is what separates IBCLCs from a CLC.
Okay. So is that 95 hours? Is that correct?
I actually have it pulled up.
I think
95 hours.
I think they changed it recently.
Right. So if I understand correctly, the first step to no matter which kind of a credential you're trying to get is going to be like classroom knowledge. So you need some classes, and that's going to be, some of them are going to be college classes, and then some of those classes are going to be like lactation specific classes that you can take online, for example, or through university. And then you're going to need like a CPR class. And so that's going to be like, I'll call that like the classroom portion. And that always is like every couple of years, it's going to change a little bit, but it's going to be about 95 hours. And that is like the foundational start to basically most lactation certifications. And at that point,
it says lactation specific education, 95 hours of lactation education, including 5 hours focused on communication skills.
Okay.
And then the health sciences education is the 14 health science course, or as an IBLCE recognized healthcare professional.
So that's what you have to do even before. So you have to have 14 health science classes, and then take 95 hours of lactation class, including a CPR. So those will be like all the classes like about like milk supply and hormones and baby stuff or whatever. And so that is just your base foundation. And at that point, you could take a test to get your CLC, your certified lactation counselor certificate. But then that would be like, if I understand correctly, to be a CLC, you're basically a counselor, so that you can give education, like counseling, verbally or virtually or written, to well families, people like prenatal consultations, like people who don't have problems, that don't have like anything complex. Which I guess if you're seeing a lactation consultant, I would imagine you would want them to be equipped to handle all the things, right? Like the complex and the like just the education part. I don't want someone coming to my house to be like, I'm going to just educate you on what happens when your baby's well. I need someone to tell me like when things are not well, what's going on. And so if you wanted to be equipped to handle more complex issues, that's when you would go pursue your IBCLC. Is that what y'all looked at?
Yeah, I would kind of consider, like, if I was a breastfeeding mom just starting out and I wanted to go, if I was looking for a CLC, I might be someone that I think breastfeeding is going really well. I'm feeling just a little bit overwhelmed, and maybe I just need someone to give me some support.
Got it.
Maybe just, acknowledge that I'm, on the right track and that kind of thing. But if I was struggling with low milk supply or oversupply or oral anatomy, difficulty with the baby, or if I have any type of really investigative questions that need to be answered, that's when I'm going to go to an IBCLC.
Got it. And what were you saying, Lisa?
Oh, I was going to say, as a CLC, that could open doors if you want to like teach prenatal classes. You can do that with a CLC. And like, you can also work in support groups and help guide that way, but it's less intervention for someone who's really struggling, I guess, less medical based.
Right. That makes sense. And if you have mastitis or something like that, you're going to want to see an IBCLC. Okay. So now you get into like, okay, how long does it usually take to satisfy that first core requirement? Before we even talk about IBCLC land, what would you say? And like cost?
So for me,
Lisa.
So if you
kind of already did it though, because you went to nursing school.
Well, no. So if you have a health science degree, you have all the little prereqs, but you need the LAC course, which is what the 95-hour course is.
The 95, okay.
Communication and stuff. And you can do that. I did it through UCSD, but they have many programs.
UCSD meaning University of California at San Diego, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And you asked about cost, so just while I'm going, I'll say that was $500 for that course, and we needed one book, and it was very pleasurable. Like, it was fun, it was educational, and it was pretty. It wasn't like too intense at all.
Okay.
So
was it like 1 semester, 1 month, 3 months?
It was 1 semester. I did it in the spring semester to get ready for doing the IBCLC stuff this year.
But the first 14 health sciences classes, I guess.
I'll tell you what they are right now.
That could take however long it takes you to take 14 classes. Is that right? Like,
yeah. So the courses
it's not 14 credits; it's 14 classes.
Right. So the college courses that you need is biology, human anatomy, human physiology, infant and child growth and development, introduction to clinical research, nutrition, psychology or counseling skills and communication skills, sociology or cultural sensitivity or cultural anthropology.
Okay.
So for me, for example, coming from a teaching background, I already had the communication skills course. I already had infant and child growth and development and 1 biology course, and also 1 sociology course just by random chance. So I still needed human anatomy, physiology, and nutrition. And when I was going through this, anatomy and physiology were a combined course. And so I ended up taking 3 prerequisite college courses on top of my degrees that I already had to meet the requirements.
So
it depends, it depends on what your background is. If you have no college education, like, you don't even necessarily have to get a full college degree to start the process, but you will need to have those college courses in order to start. So if you have no college education, that's where you're going to start.
Okay.
And one thing that I tell people when I have this conversation with them is to start your college courses first, because the other courses, which are the health sciences courses, which include BLS, medical documentation, medical terminology, occupational safety, ethics, and safety precautions, those have to be taken, I think, within 2 years of actually sitting for your test. So there's no reason to do those first. And then it could, things come up, life happens. And then if those college courses take you more than 2 years to complete, you have to go back and recertify all those. Okay. So I always recommend that people get their college recs out of the way first and then go to the next step.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And some of those other classes, the 6 ones that are health specific, they're like 1 day or like online or, a weekend workshop or something like that. So they're not full semester courses.
That makes perfect sense. So from what because I did my pathway is different than the ones you guys are doing. That's why I'm asking these questions. It sounds like if you don't have any college experience, this process could be a little bit longer. But if you're a person, let's say, hey, I'm a speech language pathologist, or hey, I'm a physical therapist and I want to become an IBCLC, you probably have a lot of this already. There might just be a couple here and there that you need to take. And then you would start that one semester that Lisa was talking about of your 95 hours that you can take in one whole semester. The cost could range around $500, or I think mine was a little bit more though, but $500 to $1,000. And then you would have your prerequisites to start your IBCLC program, or at that point, then you can go straight in and sit for the test for the CLC, Certified Lactation Counselor, if you're more interested in taking care of lactation patients and doing education, prenatal classes, and peer support groups. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, okay. I think that's perfect.
Okay, that's great. Now, here we are. We're getting into the IBC, this, going for the actual next level. Tell me, Lisa, since you're in the middle of doing this right now, you did your health science or your college classes, because that was part of your nursing degree, and you did the 95 hours. And then what? What comes next for your board, your IBCLC?
So then you apply to a program. You could apply to a program. I chose Pathway 2. So you choose what pathway you want to do. Pathway 2, I think, works really well if you are not currently working as a nurse, or currently working in a field that would allow you to get hours easily. If you feel like you need a separate internship to get your 300 hours.
And to specify, if you're a nurse who works with breastfeeding moms and babies.
Then it'd probably be great to just do Pathway 1.
So maybe I should interject and talk about the different pathways, and then I'll come back to you. So there's 3 pathways to becoming an IBCLC. There's and they make it really freaking confusing. So Pathway 1 is for people like me. You don't have to do it this way, but you can. If you were a labor and delivery nurse, postpartum nurse, a midwife or something, and you're working with moms and babies, you would need to you would need to say, hey, I've worked with moms and babies and helped them with breastfeeding, and I've done about 1,000 hours. I've done at least 1,000 hours. That is what you'll need to show of supporting moms and babies. And at that point, you have met your clinical hours. So check, you don't have to figure out how you're going to meet your clinical criteria. Pathway 1, 2, and 3 have different criteria for clinical hours. So Pathway 1 is 1,000 hours. So someone that's what I did, right? And I'm not going to give my opinion on which pathway is the best, because that's not what this show's about. Pathway 2 is going to be, I need clinical hours because I have met the criteria. I've done my college level classes and I've done those 95 hours, but I don't have the amount of hours needed with moms and babies of helping them with breastfeeding. So if you're a physical therapist, like I said, speech, if you were a pediatric dentist, or if you were a midwife, or not midwife, if you were another medical professional or healthcare person, but you didn't work with moms and babies. And so now you need to figure out, okay, well, how many hours does this pathway require? And this pathway requires 300 hours of supervised mom-baby breastfeeding internship. Pathway 3 is going to be more of an apprenticeship. And this is going to be, the requirement is 500 hours. And you will still need the whole health sciences, 95 hours, but you will basically find your own mentor and you will have them you'll be an apprentice under them, and they will teach you whatever you need to know to pass your board exam over a 500-hour span of time, and they need to show proof and documentation that you have actually shadowed them for that long. Is there anything you would correct about the way I explained that?
I think you explained that really well, but I will say when I was brand new to this whole process, researching 100% on my own, didn't know anyone in the birth world or birth community or anyone to go to get answers from, I just started emailing every IBCLC in the Austin area. And some of them emailed me back, got back to me, which was super, super helpful. I'm still so appreciative of that. But a lot of them kind of told me, you want to focus on Pathway 2, if at all possible, because Pathway 2 makes it a lot easier for you to find a mentor. If you were to do Pathway 3, then the mentor is completely responsible for coming up with your curriculum. They're very liable for your education and making sure that you are fully trained. Whereas if you go through a program what Lisa was describing, UCSDE, they already have all of that readily available for someone willing to be a mentor. And so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They take their curriculum and they apply it and they observe them and watch them and help them. So that was one of the really good pieces of advice I got from people when I was first researching, was most people are more willing to accept a Pathway 2 student. If your best friend is an IBCLC and owns their own practice and is willing to take you under their wing for 500 hours and guide you through Pathway 3 and like really work with you on that, then obviously that might be more the way to go. But I think when you're trying to get your foot in the door, it makes you, it gives you a better chance of finding someone to work with you if you're coming through a Pathway 2 program.
Right. I think sometimes people get turned off on Pathway 2 because they don't want to pay the money for a university to like facilitate them. And I can talk about that later, because I will tell you, I've had Pathway 2, Pathway 3 people. And if you are a healthcare professional, if you're a lactation consultant considering taking a Pathway 3 person, I highly recommend you check with your Department of Labor, because unless you are an assigned contract with a university to have a student, if you're taking someone in as an apprentice, you are liable to labor law, and you really should be paying them at least minimum wage for every hour that they're working with you, unless all they're doing is observing, and you have to prove that all they did is observe. Like even them weighing a baby or like taking out, I don't know, a diaper, like that's considered work. So there is a liability component to that. But I love Pathway 2 because Katie came from Pathway 2, and Katie is a badass lactation consultant. And just to give a shout out, you said that you sent a lot of emails out to lactation consultants trying to learn like what to do, and not too many people responded, but you told me Naya did respond, and she gave you really great advice. And Naya is amazing. Her company's here in Austin, and it's called It's More Than Milk. And she also went to UCSD, if I'm not mistaken, and she's a badass lactation consultant. So Lisa here, she's coming up through the USDDE.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? She's coming back through that. She's coming up through that program, and she's going to be a badass lactation consultant. So tell us, now that I've totally interrupted you, about what you're doing Pathway 2. So like, tell me what you're doing next. Like how many hours? What does that look like? Is it virtual? Is it in person? And how did you get your hours? Like, how does that work?
I'll start by just saying Pathway 2, I think, is a great option if you really want to build your base of education related to lactation, like even before you start doing clinicals and other stuff, because you just get so many classroom hours. And like, it might seem daunting, but I feel like in the end, you at least have all this knowledge that you can use.
So you're like going to the classroom, not just going to like our clinic. So you started your Pathway 2, and you have classroom time, and you have like shadowing time. Is that right?
So our Pathway 2 started in September, like September 1st, and it will end at the end of May. And it's all online. Like I'm doing it all online. I think if you live closer to a university that does it, they have hybrids sometimes. But online, there are asynchronous lectures and then projects and assignments to turn in. And then there is a full day of synchronous courses where we're in a group, like a cohort, they call it, of there's about 30 people in each cohort. And we have a very experienced lactation consultant who leads it. And we do different scenarios, and we talk about the way to do it and the education we're learning and experiences in the clinic. So that's one day a week. And then I'm shadowing with you guys for we need a total of 300 hours. So I'm getting to shadow with Milk Diva for those 300 hours. But I'm also supplementing mine with the UCSD simulation hours that they offer.
Okay.
So I will have an abundance by the end, but I think it's really kind of a good base.
Okay. So for Pathway 2, you would need to have completed that baseline work that we talked about earlier, health science classes, and the 95 hours. And then you enroll in a university program, which is 1 semester long. And at the end of that 1 semester, you would have, two semesters. It's 1 year, 2 semesters. At the end of those 2 semesters, now you have gotten all your credentials to be ready to sit for your exam to become an IBCLC.
Yes.
Okay.
That's really, yeah.
Anybody want to talk about that wonderful exam?
The exam, I feel like I was really well prepared for it, honestly, because I did get such a good education going through the Pathway 2 program. And USCDE also does offer the 95-hour course. So you can do one semester of the 95 hours. That kind of gets you pretty much qualified for CLC. And then the semester after that, then you can start with the Pathway 2 program. And so I felt like I was really well prepared for the exam through that program. My issue is that you have to complete all your hours before you can apply to take the exam. And you have to apply to take the exam 6 months before the exam. So there's
they only give the exam twice per year.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you got to wait. Isn't it like 3 months after you take your exam to get your results? So it's like 9 months wait.
Yeah. So it's a 6-month wait to take your exam. I really wish I really wanted to take it as soon as I was done with the course because it was all fresh on my mind. But there is a 6-month wait. You apply, then you're able to take the test 6 months later, and then you get your results about 3 months later. So it is about a 9-month period.
Yeah.
And so you want to know that ahead of time so you can plan life accordingly, especially if you have another job or you have kids at home and that kind of stuff. So it is always good to know what you're getting into and what to expect, especially if you're planning finances and life and things like that ahead of time.
Yeah. So that's kind of good to know. Basically, after you've taken your college level classes, a lot of universities, well, the ones who have lactation programs, will offer you a 3-semester basically pathway to becoming a lactation an IBCLC, which would be the first semester is the 95 hours that you would do, and then the next 2 semesters are going to be the clinical knowledge that you actually need. Mm-hmm. And a company that also includes like the actual shadowing and the mentorship. Mm-hmm. I hope people know. I'm not putting this podcast out there because I'm like trying to get more mentees because that's not the goal. So please don't call me for that. I mean, it comes in waves when we're able to accommodate that. It is a lot for a person to take on a student. It slows you down. And so when it's really busy, like it's a big thing. So, that is why I'm really selective as to who I take, when I take, and all of that. But that's also why Pathway 3 is a little more challenging because really think about it, like what is the benefit to the person who's taking on the mentee? They're not protected from labor laws by working with a university. And some people try to charge you for those, like they'll say, well, I'll do your mentorship if you pay me $1,500 or whatever. I'm not sure how legal that is. So yeah, just consider that because I think in theory, you're like, oh, I'll just find someone to shadow. It'll be fine. But then when the rubber meets the road, you're like looking for 2 years. And by that time you could have been done and had a job and paid half your tuition.
And that was the part when I first started researching this that gave me the most anxiety. Like, am I choosing the right pathway and will I find a preceptor? And so then when I got involved with the program, and again, just like Naomi said, like we're not an advertisement for USCDE. It's just that Lisa and I both have to They actually found Naomi and Milk Diva for me. So they reached out to Naomi and Milk Diva to see if she would be willing to work as a mentor for me. Otherwise, I don't know that Naomi and I would have ever crossed paths or like known of each other. And so once I crossed that bridge, got accepted to the program, and then they let me know that they had found a mentor for me, I was like, oh my gosh, this was the part in this whole process, because I'd already been, doing the prereqs and all the other courses. I'd been working on it for a couple of years because I did it very slowly when I was home with my kids. I was thinking, like, what if I've invested all of this money and effort, and then I get to that point of trying to find a mentor and there's no one there for me and I can't find anyone and I'm just stalled. So that was another really helpful part of being part of a university program, is that they actually found my mentor for me, and it ended up working out really well because Naomi and I hit it off, and she was like, I don't want to train you and make you into a great lactation consultant and then send you out into the world to be my competitor. So that was a real blessing, and I will forever be grateful to USC. We'll figure out how to say their name eventually, but I'm forever grateful to them. University of Southern, Lisa.
UCS, so University of California. San Diego.
Yes.
I think you're thinking USC, yeah.
There's also Arizona has a program, and so there's a university in Portland, Oregon, who has a program. I'm sure there's more. I just don't know them all. But I wanted to ask you guys about like cost and fees and things like that. What I can say, I remember my exam cost me like $750, and I thought that was a really expensive test. And then my hours, my 95 hours cost me about $1,000 plus the textbook. Tell me, well, and I had my college classes, so I didn't have to pay for that. But tell me, like, what are the fees and stuff that generally someone should maybe expect to pay?
Lisa and I were talking about this earlier today. We kind of, in both of our minds, going through the process, kind of rounded out the numbers to around $10,000.
From like getting the initial college classes to finishing and taking the test?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Lisa, the part that you're in right now is about 7,500. Is that right?
Yeah, 7,500. Okay. The first part was 500, and then books on top of that,
and your exam.
The exam,
a few extra fees, and then the exam,
and then also the health science courses, like basic life support. Those things, those could be, $100 here, $100 there. So. I guess that we kind of both had about $10,000 as the average amount that you would spend, not including like if you need college prerequisite courses to meet the criteria.
Right. And then you would want to go to your community college and take anatomy, physiology and nutrition and those kind of things. And so that is kind of what I wanted to kind of lead into next is, and y'all didn't know I was going to talk about this, but that's an investment, right? Mm-hmm. And what I can say is that that's not attainable to all people from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. And so there are organizations, and one of them I wanted to highlight right now is called MICC. It stands for Monetary Investment for Lactation Consultant Certification. There's lots of, there's grant money out there. I would consider looking at... what's our association? United States Lactation Consulting Association, USLCA. I don't know if they have a scholarship. If you were to spend time researching, there are scholarships programs for people of color to get into lactation, because there's a very few number of Hispanic and Black people in the lactation world. And a lot of that, that's another whole episode, but it is really challenging to not work and not get paid for all the time that you're going to school as a second degree, or, not so many people do choose lactation right out of high school. This is going to be a second degree. You already have a car payment, you have rent, you may have kids already. So I'm just on the website of USLCA. They do have a scholarship. They give it out twice per year. And so that is an area that people are going to want to look into. Also the MILCC scholarship, which I'll put a link in the show notes to. And I know that there's other grants and scholarships out there. It's just something you're going to have to spend time researching, just because it changes every year, especially what changes in government and what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. But I do want to say that it's I think a disservice that lactation consultants, like, it would be amazing if we had, like, when I was in school, I remember being in high school, there was like a recruitment program to be a teacher, and they would like pay for some of my loans if I promised them like 2 years of work afterwards. And the same thing with nurses. And lactation world, there's such a very few number of lactation consultants doing private practice. And that is a number one way to help increase breastfeeding rates, which really does help benefit and improve the helps to benefit the health of babies and families for future generations. And so if people of color are not able to access this kind of career because of financial limitations, they're also less likely to reach their community. And we also, even just having more bilingual lactation consultants, we're really lucky to have me and Isabel. My Spanish is not great, but Isabel's is. That's really, really important. So I share the cost. I think it's important because this is, we're lucky and I think blessed to be able to have done this as a second career for all of us, but it's not always attainable. And so I hope that people persevere and would still consider this career, even while working. Like, you can do it while working as a CNA or as a, like, whatever hospital job you have, and you can make this work while you're still working. But it is not easy, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
We were talking about this earlier today too. How difficult, the financial side of it is. And I think the biggest commitment is the time. So we were saying, Lisa, didn't we kind of talk about like maybe about 20 hours a week? So at least the equivalent of a part-time job, if not more.
Yeah.
So if you're already working a full-time job and have kids at home, and you're looking to become an IBCLC, like Naomi said, it's very, very doable, but it will be about a year and a half or so where it will be a lot of your time. And so you want to try to make sure you have as much support as possible.
Are you a parent of a baby between 3 and 6 months old, ready to transform uncertainty about infant nutrition and solid food feeding into absolute mastery? Then our new course called Baby's First Bites is perfect for you. Equip yourself with the supreme confidence to navigate the exciting journey of introducing solid foods to your baby, and dive into the knowledge and practical tips for crafting safe, nourishing meals that actively contribute to your baby's development. So this course is perfect for you if you value time-efficient strategies, if you believe in the power of whole foods, if you prioritize safety, and if you embrace a holistic, evidence-based approach. Just as a side note, our Baby's First Bites digital course has an option for live interactive sessions for more personalized guidance as well. So this course will be offered several times per year. We're currently accepting people onto our wait list. You can also take our short quiz by visiting www.milkdiva.com/nutrition or visit the link in the show notes. After completing the quiz, you'll receive our 7-page solids readiness checklist. It'll be sent straight to your inbox. And if you just want to skip the quiz and all of that and just join our waitlist, visit the same webpage and just click the link for joining our waitlist. Hope to see you over there. Hey there, we're back. It's just me because your brilliant friend here was messing around with something. I hit a mouse, stopped the recording. We kept talking. No idea it wasn't recording. So you're just stuck with me now. They were very gracious in wanting to come back on and record, but they had to go pick up their kids. So that's the cool part about being a lactation consultant, is you do have a lot of flexibility, except for when your boss is recording podcasts. But we left off talking about, accessibility and how challenging it can be for certain people of different, you have to be in a position to take basically a year off and pursue this education, and it's not always accessible. And so in the show notes, I am going to put 2 different organizations that offer scholarships to help cover some of the cost of perhaps taking the test or some of the education, so that you can look into, because the things that both the ladies shared when we were talking and I thought we were recording is, it can seem like, oh my gosh, this is not going to, like, the stars and the moon are not going to line up. But a lot of the work has already been done for you in this particular episode. Like, it took Katie about a year to figure out what pathway, what does she need to do? Who has programs? Like, what courses do I need to take? Where do I even go to find out what's a reputable place? What's not a reputable place? And so in the show notes, I'm going to put, MILCC.org, which is monetary investment for lactation consultant certification. I'm going to put the IBCLC commission and how to become an IBCLC. And I'm going to put lactationtraining.com, which is LER. They help with getting the hours. If you wanted to do the 95 hours separate from a university, you can do it all through them. So right then and there, a lot of your research is done. And when you are going through a program, they really do help make sure that everything is falling in line for you so that you are getting the credentials that are necessary. It's just a huge timeline from the time you do your education to the time you apply to see if you're eligible to take the exam. That could be 6 months right there, because they only give the exam twice per year. And then once you sit for your exam, you have to usually wait 2 to 3 months before you get your results if you passed or not. I think it's important also to really remind you that all the things that we just discussed, if you can see, the IBCLC certification is the only one that requires all of this hands-on training. And so I went on to ask Lisa and Katie, like, how well prepared did they feel after they did their their education, their actual clinical hours. And they both are with us. Like I physically spent 6 months training Katie, and Katie is spending 6 months training Lisa. And so they're getting to see a lot of, they both got to see a lot of patients in real life scenarios. So they're very, very well equipped. Maybe pathway one, like I took, I felt very unequipped, and I was very blessed to have other lactation consultants let me shadow them after I had my certification. But just know that someone who does a CLC or CBS doesn't have to do any of the clinical hours. And so there is a huge, huge difference. And even for those of us like myself, I went on and took thousands and thousands of dollars of additional courses to learn more nuanced things like insufficient glandular tissue, low milk supply, tongue ties, managing fragile infants, so NICU babies with comorbidities, a lot of things to do with maternal hormones and things like that. Those are things that are not taught in your normal IBCLC course. So just understand that you can, the base level of being able to really help families who are having feeding issues is the IBCLC. But then after that, you just continue your education by specializing in the things that are interesting to you and your patient and your community. So that was something else that we talked about that didn't get recorded. I also went on to I asked them like, how much does it cost? And I think we talked about that. And she, it says it's about $10,000, not including the college education credits like the anatomy and physiology and all of that. And I was like, well, do you make your money back or not? And Katie and Lisa both went on to explain, like, it really does depend how quickly you make your money back with what environment you're going to go work in. So if you're going to work in a hospital, in a WIC clinic, or if you're going to work for someone's private practice, it really depends. Like, do they have a lot of volume? Will you be seeing 2 patients per week, or will you be seeing 15 patients per week? That's going to make a big difference in how quickly you make back your money. But I will say what Katie mentioned is that people who go into this profession is because they love the work. They're not doing this to get rich. So if you're a person thinking like, man, I'm a burnt out nurse or physical therapist or speech person, I think lactation looks really cool. I just think being with moms and babies and latching them all day long, helping reposition them is going to be like so rewarding. This may not be the job for you because that is not our job. That is maybe 5 or 10% of our job. 90% of our job is a lot more complex and nuanced, and a lot more using critical thinking, problem solving skills, physiology. It is. I would say 90% of the time you're working overcoming problems each visit. It's not just like, oh, let's latch and everything comes together. There's a lot of other things. More often than not, you're working with overcoming challenges rather than celebrating the win because you got the baby to latch. That's not really... Our families that are coming to us are so educated, and they're able to troubleshoot some of the minor issues online with some of the support that's available online. When they come to us for an in-person visit, they are having more complex feeding issues. Some of that is maternal, like there's something going on the mom side, and some of that is like we're having to do a lot of investigative things to figure out like what's going on with our baby. Why is she or he not able to, cup or move her tongue properly or have stamina to remove milk from the breast? And we're doing a lot of troubleshooting. So it's a lot more using your brain and troubleshooting than it is like, oh, happy moms and babies latching. And so people who do this profession, I would say, please make sure that you have a love for helping and serving your community. This is not going to be a job where you get to it's not like you just posh and you check out and every day is just rainbows and, unicorns. There's a lot of emotional, heavy feelings and difficult birth stories and experiences and lots of heavy mood and complex family issues that you're overcoming. So some of the environments people might wonder where they would work after they got their IBCLC. You could work in a community clinic like WIC, and you can help support families at a WIC clinic with offering lactation consultation. You can work at a hospital helping new mothers wake up their sleepy babies, make sure they're not losing too much weight after birth or managing jaundice. And you can work in an outpatient private practice clinic like Milk Diva. And then you're working with families when they get home from the hospital from usually, a couple days of life all the way to 6 months or even 12 months of life, and go into introducing solids, which is something else I had to learn separately, and, infant nutrition when it comes to solids. So I hope that helps to answer some of your questions about like, how long does it take to become a lactation consultant? What is the actual job? What are the requirements? What is the cost? And what does the job outlook look like for IBCLCs? I will say, the salary for an IBCLC or how much money you make is really dependent on so many things. But I would say, a range, depending on what part of the country you live in, should be like between, this is a terrible range, but I would say between $40,000 and $75,000, depending on your experience, if you're in the hospital, if you're part-time, full-time, or if you're in private practice. I do think it's really important to always have a mentor. I think the difference, when I asked Katie and, the people in my practice, like, how did it feel when you finished your education and you went out into the field? And Katie went on to explain her first visit was like a little overzealous. Like she just felt like she just was like, I want to show everyone how much I know. And she just kind of went in a little heavy and kind of maybe dumped a little bit too much information on this family. And then we were able to talk and, debrief. And I kind of shared with her on each visit, you should be really working on one or two things to overcome with the family. We really can't manage more than the parent nor ourselves can manage more than that, in one visit. That's why it takes subsequent visits. But that kind of goes on to the importance of having a mentor after you finish schooling, is because you're never going to know everything, and human beings are very nuanced. And so I'm very blessed that we work as a team. There's 5 of us, and there's been points in time where we've had over 70 years of experience. And we all have different experience. We had a person who had 30 years of experience, 40 years of experience. And so she's seen lactation just evolve throughout the recommendations over several decades. Some of us work in the hospital in the past. Some of us have like a background in herbs. Some of us have a background in the NICU and medically fragile babies. Some of us have a background with medically fragile moms and some of the hormone, thyroid, and illness related things, immunology, things that can come up. And we're nurses. A lot of us are nurses. So we have like a group brain, and we speak basically every day about cases, and we're always trying to make sure we haven't missed anything. So we're talking with each other, and it's very, 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 very important to work at refining your practice as often as possible by not being a sole lone ranger. And you're always wanting to look at the most, recent clinical research. And it's hard to do when you're seeing a bunch of patients. That's why you need a group of people and mentorship to continue elevating your game. And they say iron sharpens iron. And I'm really blessed to say that I love being able to bounce ideas and concerns. Sometimes you're just seeing the same thing over and over again. You're the same person. You need to set a fresh set of eyes. And so that is what we do as a group. So I think as a new lactation consultant, at least for the first 4 years, you should definitely work in an environment where you can collaborate on cases that you're not making progress in, because you should always be able to make progress with people's families. And if not, we need to get, second set of eyes in there and figure out what we're missing. So I did go on to ask them, which I didn't get to record, if you had a magic wand, what would you share with an aspiring IBCLC? Katie shared that she would want people to persevere. While it's not easy and it may take you some time because maybe you're staying home with your kids or something happened one year, you weren't able to actually enroll for this course. And oh my gosh, my 1.5-year plan now is a 2.5-year plan. Persevere. It is worth it. It is a very rewarding job. You are serving our community, and we really are helping to improve the health of future generations. And there's so few lactation consultants in private practice, or lactation consultants, period, nationwide, that we really do need to pay it forward. And that is why I wanted to record this episode. And this is why I do take on mentees on occasion. I've had at least 3 or 4, because then each of them will go teach other future people to become lactation consultants, and we can start helping to elevate the profession, because there's very few lactation consultants in our country or in the world. We do have more than the rest of the world, but really, if you think about it, we're less than 10,000 IBCLCs across the country, and we have 10,000 chiropractors in the state of Texas alone. I mean, for the whole country to just have 10,000 lactation consultants, that means many people in rural areas are not able to get access to quality lactation care. And that in turn has a clinically and researched, proven negative effect on the health outcome of babies. And so this work is for people who love it and want to make an impact, a lifelong impact on the health of future generations, which is part of our mission and vision statement. And so Lisa, who's our mentee, she went on to share that exactly what I just said, that this is a job for people who genuinely care and love moms and babies and families and really want to help them meet their goals. This is not for someone who's trying to get rich. And she also recommended persevering. So yeah, that was how we finished out the episode. So sorry you couldn't see them in person and you're stuck staring at me, but I'm a real person. I make mistakes and I done clicked the wrong button and messed it all up. But I hope this was helpful to you. Please share with anyone that you think is interested in becoming a lactation consultant. I get no money from University of wherever I mentioned or any of these other places. I just want you guys to know how you can take the steps and plan accordingly if you want to become a lactation consultant, an IBCLC, and what the different kinds of certifications are, why they're different. And then you guys make the best decision for you guys. Okay. You guys have a great day. Thanks for dealing with me and my mess. Bye. Thanks for listening. To learn more about newborn feeding and get your free swipe file, visit milkdiva.com/newborn feeding. And if you've ever said, wow, I wish I would have known that while you're listening to this podcast, then help a friend out and share this podcast with them. You can also help us by leaving us a rating so more people can benefit from finding this podcast. Medical disclaimer. Please know that all opinions expressed on this podcast are solely my own and not intended to substitute the advice of a medical provider. I am not a medical doctor, and all information shared is intended for your general knowledge and is geared towards full-term, healthy singleton infants and healthy, low-risk pregnant or postpartum women.